Good afternoon and welcome to Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, KHTS, AM 1220 and 98.1 FM. This is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita, back for another opportunity to talk about the two things we're not supposed to talk about in public, but we do anyway, religion and politics. And no matter what the naysayers say, they do indeed mix. I've got two guests today, excited about both of them. Our first guest today is Roxanne Hoag. She is the chairwoman of the LA GOP. She's not only a chairwoman, she's a mother, she is a wife, she's an actress, and now is representing the LA GOP as chair. Roxanne, how are you?
I am fine, although I have to remind everybody that you may not be interested in politics, but in California, politics is sure interested in you.
Unfortunately, you don't have to remind me.
Yeah.
But definitely our listeners would need that reminding. Roxanne Hoag, thank you so much for calling in today. This coming weekend obviously is big for the LA GOP. Tell the listeners a little bit about what's happening in Orange County this weekend.
Well, first of all, the Los Angeles County Republican Party represents over 1 million registered Republicans, and a lot of people feel like they're all alone if they're conservative in Southern California, but we are the largest county with Republican registration in the entire United States. And so we're just part of the California Republican Party, and twice a year they have the convention to get business done and make sure we're all on the same page. And this year, all of a sudden, the Democrats have dropped in everyone's lap this insane redistricting bill, which is completely corrupt, Prop 50. And so everybody's going to be focused on how we get out the vote to fight that.
And talking about Prop 50, this is something that's going to cost the California taxpayers upwards of $250 million. We've already put in place a law that says we wanted a, quote, independent panel. And, of course, I put independent in scare quotes there. And now,
nudge, nudge, wink, wink.
Exactly.
Say no more.
And now the governor is probably going to play this in November as the way that California fights Donald Trump and the federal government. Do you think that California is going to fall for Gavin Newsom's scheme here?
Here's the thing. Californians, we have a real independent streak. And the governor tried to sell us on how great it was that crime was not illegal. And yet we passed Prop 36 even in Los Angeles County with a resounding majority. And I think and hope the same thing is going to happen with this piece of dog droppings because it's ultimately incredibly unfair. Yes, you and I both know that the quote-unquote Independent Citizens Redistricting Committee had a very heavy thumb on the scale, but this is just insane. This was set up as a gift to very corrupt people in the Capitol, Assembly Leader Robert Rivas and Senate Leader Mike McGuire, and it's squeezing the last bit of. There's not even an appearance of parity in California. We have 9 congressional representatives out of 54. How can you think, with the voter registration approaching 40%, how do you think that's fair? You don't. And Californians don't like unfair things, ultimately.
And you just mentioned Robert Rivas, who, by the way, is undergoing quite an interesting thing right now with his offices, and also Mark McGuire. Yeah. We noticed that both of them would have redrawn districts that would essentially keep them in office for the rest of their lives.
Isn't it crazy? I'm sure it's a coincidence. I'm sure it has nothing to do with the nutty maps. I don't know if you follow Mark Moyser on Twitter or social media. He's an attorney. He ran for U.S. Senate in California a couple of years ago, and he has, his top 10 list of the wackiest looking new maps. And he's named them all, and it's worth a look. You can find it on my Twitter feed as well.
When I was up in Sacramento a couple weeks ago protesting AB 495, I connected with Mark briefly, and the only thing I said to Mark was, "Listen, I love the way that you're talking about these maps, but you really need to shave that mustache."
Mark is, you know what? We are the party of rugged individualists. And if my man Mark, with his incredible legal brain, thinks that the handlebar is back in style, then it's back in style for him.
I told him, I says, I think you're probably angling for Sheriff Chad Bianco with that stash. But anyway, that's regardless there. I want to know how focused the LA GOP and more broadly the California GOP will be should California actually vote this Gavin scheme in on November 4th. In other words, it'll definitely take the wind from our sails, but what can the LA GOP and the California GOP more broadly do, or would we be basically turned into eunuchs if this were to pass?
Well, the job of turning people into eunuchs is that of the California Democrat Party, who wants your children to be castrated and mutilated. So let's leave that for them. The fact is that what we're doing as a party, and I always have to remind people this, the party is made up of we the people. So I'm a volunteer. Almost everyone working their butts off all over California is a volunteer. Yes, we have staff at the state party and a leader, Corinne Rankin. But right now, what we're doing is not even looking to what happens if people sadly choose this. But by the way, lawsuits incoming. But what we're doing now is prepping our people to understand this is an existential crisis for a constitutional republic. Right? California is completely upending. It's the old, you have to, destroy democracy in order to save it. And so I want everyone to understand this is not an important vote in November. This is an important vote in October. They have 30 days. So let's take those 30 days. And by the way, the millions and millions of dollars that are going to be spent on this measure, and you're going to get inundated with ads, and I'm sure you've already gotten mailers, and those all go away once you turn in your ballot, right? So I know our side doesn't like to vote early. It's time to vote early. Vote incredibly early. The minute your ballot drops on October 6th, fill it in, no, no, no. And what we're doing in LA, because of course we're the biggest, baddest county in the bunch, is everybody can go to lagop.org, sign up to volunteer, and next week we'll deploy you into the field so that you can knock on doors of Republican neighbors and friends and say, hey, we need you to pay attention to this. Because unfortunately, special elections are often, a big yawn for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I know that Prop 50 is going to definitely take up a lot of oxygen this weekend at the LA GOP, and of course, I'm going to be a part of that as well. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the other executive offices that are up for grabs in 2026. Obviously, most people are always focused on the governor's race, and it would be great to get a good conservative governor in office. But we do have some other offices that I think are very relevant. For instance, state controller and the office of insurance commissioner. Any thoughts on either one of those?
Here's the thing, that people don't realize, and I'm a pragmatic optimist. I know I seem like an Energizer bunny. Like, really, I'm not going to be Pollyanna about this. We're not going to win LA County very soon. However, we can win statewide races if we lose LA County by less. And let me explain what that means. You've got 1 million Republicans sitting there, and they're getting their ballots in the mail, because we all do, but you've also got another easy 1 million people, often, sadly, people who are Christians, who are religious, who are good people, who have one foot on a banana peel and the other out the door, and they're checking Zillow all the time for North Carolina and Tennessee houses. But while you're here, please register. I know that these people, the left is horrible and intolerant, but if you are an NPP but vote conservative, switch your registration to Republican. If you're a Democrat and you still can't let go of that because you think, well, the Democrat Party of old was for free speech and pro-America, those days are gone, and you need to drop the D so that the numbers get into view, so that really good people, and we have good people already running for all these offices. I'll say that we have too many good people running for governor. I would like, out of the 50 Republicans running for governor, I would like 48 of them to look into school board, water board, assembly, supervisor, all the other races that actually make a difference in your life. That said, if LA turns out and does what they did for Prop 36, LA conservatives, and you vote the way you voted to make crime illegal again, and you vote for good governance at the state level, we can do it. We could even get, I don't want to get crazy, we could even get 2 Republicans in the top 2 because top 2 is stupid. But let's be reasonable for a second. We can win the state by participating in Los Angeles.
Absolutely. Let's go back to Prop 50 one more time here, because I really think that if California decides to not pass Prop 50, that will, in essence, neuter Gavin Newsom's chance at running in 2028. Do you think there is a one-to-one correspondence between Prop 50 passing and Gavin Newsom having sail in his wings to head into 2028, excuse me?
Nothing can stop a man that thirsty, right? Like winning, losing, none of it matters. Look what he did to San Francisco. Look what he's done to California. He burned down Pacific. I mean, nothing stops him. The man is just a sociopath, really. And for him, unfortunately, and for the Democrat base, nothing gets boomers more excited than to see someone standing up to Donald Trump. Whatever. So he'll run. Now, can he win the country? No. I fled another country that was destroyed by a silver-tongued socialist orator. Gavin is not that good. Obama was that good. Gavin is not that good. I will tell you that right now, as we speak, I am in Los Angeles in a beautiful area where homes start at $2 million. I'm waiting to go into an appointment. And my head is literally on a swivel because even though it's a public street next to Ventura Boulevard full of very high-end shops, there are 8 homeless, drugged-out people surrounding my car on the sidewalk. Every once in a while they get a little close. That's what Gavin Newsom has wrought, and the country will not reward him.
Well, from your lips to God's ears on that, Roxanne. I wanted to ask you also, this is a curiosity on my part, and I think our listeners would love to hear your answer on this. A lot of the conservatives are always looking at Hollywood very suspiciously. You obviously are an actress. You've got a great background doing TV and movies. And I'm wondering, how hard is it for a conservative now to break into the business, and how hard was it for you, or was your journey into conservatism afterwards?
You can actually hear all about my journey. I did a PragerU video, Stories of Us. Siaka Massaquoi, who used to be out of LA as well, but went to Tennessee, has the same story. Many of us have the same story. And full disclosure, my first foray into politics was when I came out to California, and I was sort of like lonely and, like, I was young. And so I volunteered to help Bill Clinton become president. I may or may not have also met Barbara Boxer and Dianne Feinstein because they were running. And that's what the Dems do well, right? They take people who need family and they give them that, whereas conservatives have family, and we're sort of busy with that. And then 2 things happened. September 11th, and I put my eldest child, who's now 28, in public school. And there the scales fell off my eyes. So as to whether an actor or a writer or an entertainer of any kind can make it, absolutely. First of all, the funniest thing out there in the world today is the Babylon Bee. Second of all, I was just at an event, a bunch of Hollywood comedian and actor friends like Nick Searcy and Brian Callen and Jamie Kennedy all went out and did a series of events for Steve Hilton. And, some of them told political jokes, but mostly they were just doing their comedy. There's Make America Laugh Again. There's a lot of people. Comedy should be subversive, right?
Yep.
In times of like these, like telling the truth is a revolutionary act, and every joke is a tiny revolution. That's George Orwell. And what I found as an actor as I made my transition was that, sure, there were people who didn't want to talk to me. It was worse at private school, by the way. But the crew was always on my side. I was on a shoot the day we finally got bin Laden. And while the executive producers were wringing their hands, the crew guys and I were like, yes, we got him. And so there's always been that dichotomy, but as Laura Ingraham says, there is a little bit of shut up and sing. I would like to not know the politics of the people who are in movies. I would like to just enjoy the movie. I can watch, Tom Cruise, Mission Impossible, whatever, Top Gun. I don't know how he votes. I don't want to know it. I can even let go of the weird Scientology thing because that's what a movie should do, right?
Yeah.
But on the other hand, people who are breaking in, like my advice to everyone is just don't talk about it, but everyone lives their life conservatively. I don't know a single super successful person that encourages their kids to take drugs, to not come to work on time, to not listen to the law, and to break all the rules. I don't know anyone that does that.
I want to give you the last word, Chairwoman. What would be your advice? What would be your words of wisdom, if you will, for folks that are coming to the LA GOP this coming weekend, and what should be our focus?
I would say remember that politics is a team sport. We are in a foxhole. When the state turns red, we can have fights about purity tests and who's the best and the mostest Reagan and Trump-like. But right now, we have to work together. And, don't fall for the Democrat trick of disagreeing with someone and then calling them evil. We just disagree on some stuff. And I'll close in the words of Ronald Reagan, your 80% friend is not your 20% enemy.
Roxanne Hoag, Chairwoman of the LA GOP, thank you so much for calling in today to Politics in the Pulpit. Looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
Same here, and pray for me as I get out of my car and walk by these people. God, pray for them, because they are wrecked, destroyed souls whose lives have been just thrown to the wind by the California Democrats.
You got it, Roxanne. You take care. We'll see you.
Thank you. All right, bye.
That's Roxanne Hoag, Chairwoman of the LA GOP. Looking forward to seeing her this weekend. Also, when we come back here on Politics in the Pulpit, we'll be talking to another very important and prominent woman here in the state of California, Dran Reese, who is the founder of Salt and Light Council. Looking forward to talking to Dran about the evangelical move here in California and to see if we can get some evangelicals off of the pew and actually voting in the upcoming election when we come back here on your hometown station. All right, we're back here live on Politics in the Pulpit on your hometown station. Again, this is your holy host, the Bishop of Santa Clarita. We just got off the phone with Roxanne Hoag, who is the chairperson of the LA GOP, and of course, the LA GOP will be meeting this coming weekend down in Orange County to strategize and to do some elections and to getting some LA regional vice chairs elected and all kinds of wonderful things down there. But also, a very influential lady as well as an influential group will also be down there in Orange County this weekend. And that, of course, is my next guest, Dran Reese, who is the founder of the Salt and Light Council. Dran, how are you?
I'm wonderful, Pastor Jerry. Thank you so much for having me on.
So I understand you just came back from a well-deserved 2-week vacation?
I did. I went to Portugal, and it was outstanding and just had a great time, and I'm glad to be back. Still a little jet lagged, but happy to be here.
Well, I am so glad you got to call in today because Portugal, I think, is about a 11-hour difference, if I'm not mistaken?
Something like that.
Yeah.
I think it's 8 hours. Actually, don't remember, but you're losing time when you go there, but you're gaining it when you come back.
Absolutely. Well, I think our listeners, for those of our listeners who may not know who you are, nor the Salt and Light Council, would you go ahead and just explain what the purpose and objective is for the Salt and Light Council?
Sure. What we are is a training program to engage citizens and particularly Christians in the areas of government, media, and education. And what we have is a training program where we offer you practical tools on how to get started and then offer some tools to make your way through and navigate with the pastor, because you cannot have this ministry in a church unless you get pastor approval. And of course, you know very full well that you have to have the right person in charge. and you have to have proper training so this person knows how to handle a ministry when we're dealing with all these political, which are really our biblical moral issues. So it's a great ministry for engaging and getting activated. And frankly, it's our God-given right. We are called to be salt and we are called to be light. And what we do is we help to preserve our Christian, Judeo-Christian heritage and our freedoms through activation at the church level.
Well, as you know, salt is both a preservative as well as an irritant. And we also know that light is good because it separates darkness, but it also exposes. And I'm assuming that Salt and Light Council does a little bit of all that, right?
Well, we have to, yes. The truth is hard to take sometimes, and that's where the salt comes in. It can sting if you have an open wound or you have issues inside of your own family that you're dealing with. But all these issues that are going on, what we call the non-negotiable moral values, which are the life issue, the marriage issue, the end-of-life issues, all of these things, plus the support of Israel, matter to us as Christians, and they're being highly attacked in the public square. And so our job is to try to preserve that as much as we can to leave a better world for the next generation, because it's disintegrating really fast because we seem to be losing a little bit of our salty flavor. And then, of course, as you said about the light shining in the darkness, it exposes evil. And so we don't like to do that much because, it can be challenging to deal with evil. But, we have Jesus and we put him out front and we give it our best shot to say no to. I mean, if you take all the Christians out of society and all the churches out, what do you have left? Pure lawlessness.
Now,
So
how many...
We're here to do our job.
When you started Salt and Light Council, Dran, several years ago, I'm assuming you probably thought every solid evangelical church would come alongside and say, yeah, I want to do that. But I'm wondering how many churches have basically balked at this and actually opposed what you're doing because they feel like, they can't talk about these issues, or frankly, they just don't want to talk about these issues.
When I first got started, I asked myself the question, or actually I read Charles Finney's quote, if the very foundations of our nation fall away, the pulpit is responsible. And I thought, well, that's it. There's the problem, but there's the solution. So I came up with a cookie cutter prepackaged program for churches because when I was called to be involved by my pastor, nobody gave me a playbook for how this was going to happen. So I just jumped in and I went, well, now what do? I have no idea who our elected officials are. I have no idea what activism is all about. I have no idea about any of this. And so hence Salt and Light Council was born really out of the Proposition 8 battle here in California for the marriage issue back in 2008. So having come up with that program, I thought, this is what the pastors have been waiting for, Pastor Jerry. Oh, my gosh. And we're going to provide it for them, and they'll be instantly involved. 3 hours up and running. Cricket. Cricket. And furthermore, it was that way for many, many years. And so what's floated our boat is, number one, there have been a river of tears cried over all of this because, I'm so passionate about understanding and knowing that the success of our country is only because of the God that we serve. And unless we as a people understand that we have a role and a responsibility to be involved, including in government, and that means all of the world. We're to be involved in all the world, not just selectively take portions such as government and media and education and do nothing in there, which is exactly what the church has done, and opened a vacuum. We felt that we could come in and, start to, fill up that vacuum with the truth and the righteousness of God. But it was very hurtful, and it was confusing, frankly, as a citizen trying to engage with the churches. But I've learned along the way, and it had to get worse before it gets better, and that's where we're at, Pastor Jerry, because now more and more pastors are paying attention to what the ministry that we have, and we follow along with the pastor group. We're getting new churches every day, And I'm excited about that. And I sometimes say, better late than, as we all say, better late than never, but is it too little too late? Although I will say, Pastor Jerry, I do sense that we have an opportunity here, and we need to seize the day.
Yeah, absolutely. As I was just telling you, we had Roxanne Hoag, chairperson of the LA GOP, on at the top of the hour. I didn't ask her this question, but I wanted to ask you this question. And I was just wondering your thoughts on whether or not the California GOP more broadly and the LA GOP more particularly, do they have a people of faith problem? In other words, what I mean by that is they obviously want the evangelical vote, but they don't necessarily want all the evangelical convictions to come along with that. So your thoughts on whether or not the California GOP and the LA GOP have a problem with people of faith?
Well, and the San Diego GOP and every GOP, the regional county chairs all have a problem with this. The Republican Party in general, well, the Democrats and the Republican parties both are falling away from the Lord, one more than the other. Of course, that's, the Democrat Party because of their abject, fascination with transgenderism and aborting little babies in the womb. And that's why that party is pretty much dying and becoming archaic. But the Republican Party itself is being infiltrated and has been for years. I did not mean to get involved in this, but this is where being salt and light comes in. You have to take the knowledge that you learn through Scripture and then the encouragement that the Lord gives you to go out and do something and be something and share your faith with others. And I started to see that the platforms, this is the written platforms of the party, that just as we have biblical Scripture as our written platform, each of the parties have their platform that tells you exactly what the candidates are going to run on, whether they do or they don't, and what they're going to do to you. And of course, with the Democrats, you have the pro-abort, murder babies in the womb situation, and the pro-transgenderism and LGBT and pro-Muslim, et cetera, et cetera. And the Republicans were the party that stood closest to our scriptural position. However, they're being infiltrated. The party has, for the last 10 years, been eroded from the inside by some internal factions. One is the Log Cabin Republicans, and it's being challenged. Our biblical rights are being challenged in this party day in and day out. So I thought, well, there's nothing better that I can do is to be salt and light inside of the party that will at least allow me in the door. And that's why I'm there, Pastor Jerry, is to keep reminding them that this party will become nothing like it is if it continues to go down this road, and there will be no place for Christians to land in a party if we do not hold on to what is our faith and our values inside this party.
One of the things that is striking to me, especially as a pastor of over the last 23 years, is the track record of evangelicals when it comes to voting. Now, there's no doubt that evangelicals vote in a block, but I am very surprised to find out that evangelicals just don't get out enough to vote. So I'll ask you, Dran, do evangelicals in California in particular have a bad track record of getting out to vote?
100%. A few years ago, although I will say during the Trump administration, there was a little more enthusiasm, but it was for a presidential election. They don't seem to show up at all for the primaries, which is very sad because that determines who's going to run in the general election. But even in the general election, they don't show up. And it's a shame. In fact, it breaks my heart for us as evangelicals that the people of God are not given instruction by their pastors in this role and this responsibility to be salt and light in the community. And voting is a privilege that we here in the United States of America have been given, and have been given the privilege of freedom and the right to own property, which so many other countries don't have. 70% of all the rest of the countries of the world live under some form of socialism or tyranny. Only 30% live under freedom, and we are one of those countries. But we're losing that because we are not paying attention to what is the kind of the foundation that holds together society. We have a system of government that we use here in this country, and it's being eroded from the inside out, and our faith is in jeopardy. And I am disturbed that more pastors don't talk about elections, don't offer election sermons, all of which, by the way, we provide for pastors. We provide election sermons. We provide tools, the differences between the party from a biblical standpoint, never mentioning the parties. We do all this nonpartisan stuff to sanitize the church, to be, literally make the case without even mentioning the names of the party, which is now gone with this new IRS ruling. You can say what you need to say and say it clearly, because when they're violating our faith, we have our First Amendment right. So, yes, we need the Christians to get out there and vote, and I would really like to take those Christians that don't vote over my knee and spank them, because they are part of the problem for the demise of our country. But I do pray once again that more and more people will recognize their role and responsibility before God, and that with or without their pastors, they will get out to vote. And I pray that will happen.
I'm glad that the IRS finally caught up with what Freedom's Way Baptist Church has been doing for 23 years, which is just unapologetically
Amen.
doing and saying what we biblically are mandated to do. But one of the things that I'm going to talk about this coming Saturday, in fact, we're going to just right now talk a little bit about the Pastors Roundtable that is going to be, or the Pastors Speak, if you will, with the Salt and Light this coming Saturday. One of the things that I'm going to lead off with is a quote from Francis Schaeffer, who has gone home to be with the Lord many years ago. But Francis Schaeffer said this. He says, "The ignorance of the church is more dangerous than the decadence of the culture." And I think what he means by that is just the fact that the church is just ignorant of things, and it's so easy to just blame the decadence of the culture. Well, sinners will be sinners, right, Dran? The culture is going to be debaucherous. The culture is going to do what the culture does, because predominantly the culture is unregenerate. But the church should have no excuse, but the ignorance of the church is the problem. And, of course, I think that comes from unfaithful pastors and unfaithful elders who are just not communicating in a very dogmatic way what they need to be doing on a Sunday morning. What say you, Dran?
Well, I'm hopefully going to finish my book this year. It's called Passive Pulpits, 35 Excuses from Pastors Why They Won't Engage in the Cultural Battle. And the number one excuse is, I don't want to offend anyone.
Oh, I love doing it.
Number one. Isn't it going to be great? But that's where we're at. Pastors are not, it's hard for me because I respect the role of pastors so much. They have so much on their plate. They have issues with their congregations and all the people inside of their church having marital issues or whatever it is, divorce, et cetera, drugs, and now this new transgenderism issue. I mean, it goes on and on and on. But the reason that we're there and why there are so many problems is that we forgot to go backwards in time to the precedent. Like, what was the precedent that was set decades ago? What bill got passed a long time ago that set us up for today's culture? And when you start to trail it all the way back, we've been allowing this as a church to happen for far too long. Silent pastors, to me, are the problem with America. And again, one of the things that our ministry does is we work with a pastors group called libertypastors.com, and I hope people will go there and, to libertypastors.com and join one of these seminars that go on frequently.
Dran, we're going to a hard break. Yes. Can I hold you over for just one brief segment?
Sure.
Great. We're going to go to a commercial here on your hometown station. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Dran Reese, who is the founder of the Salt and Light Council here on your hometown station. All right, we're back here for our final segment of Politics in the Pulpit here on your hometown station, and we were talking to Dran Reese, who is the founder of the Salt and Light Council, And it's an organization, a 501c3, by the way, that helps churches and encourages churches and gives churches the tools necessary to be salt and light, not only in their churches and community, but of course in the state of California. I wanted to talk, Dran, about this weekend and the forum that you are putting together called The Pastors Speak. And it's called Reboot Marriage and Family, Upholding Our Judeo-Christian Heritage and Values. And of course, we've got a couple of, we had a former elected official and an elected official that's supposed to be there. I'm wondering what your vision is in this forum and what your objective is in seeing this forum make any kind of difference here in California from your perspective, Dran. What is the objective of this forum this weekend?
This particular weekend, it is to, once again, remain a presence inside of the Republican Party for Faith and Values. That's what we do. We are the only true Christian organization inside of the party. We've been at it for now 5 years, putting on these events. There are 2 a year, so we've been doing this quite a while. But the reason that we are doing this is to make sure that they recognize that the evangelical vote and the people of God are coming together, and we've been growing over the years. You know, we started off with maybe, 30 or 40 people, and now, we've had over 350 people that came to our event at some points. So the point is we are growing. The people of God are there, and they look forward to our event now. So we are making sure that we uphold our Judeo-Christian heritage and values inside of a party which is trying to abandon this strictly for using us as voters and taking our money. But no, they have to honor the Word of God. So this weekend we have, 7 pastors, 2 legislators, and myself. And the topic, you said, rebooting marriage and family. And each one has a particular topic. And so you have been tasked with strengthening the foundations of the family. That's your topic, and you'll have a few minutes to speak on that. And so I'm hoping that you will talk about the definition of marriage and what, about divorce, why that's wrong, and about fatherlessness, and, what has happened to our prisons. These are some of the topics you could talk about. But we want to re-engage the Christian community inside of the Republican Party to remember that we're there, we're strong, and don't step on our faith anymore.
I'm reminded of the quote that sometimes some people will say that Alexander de Tocqueville did not say this, but I think he did. I happen to have a copy of Democracy in America in my library. And Alexis de Tocqueville, of course, said that he searched for the greatness of America in her fields and in her factories and so on and so forth. I'm kind of giving it a quick paraphrase here. But then he said, it wasn't until I went into her churches and saw her pulpits aflame with righteousness, then I understood the secret to America's greatness. And again, this is Alexis de Tocqueville, a French author who observed and was looking for the greatness of America. And he concluded that the secret to America's success were righteous pulpits aflamed with good preaching. Can we say that the reason why we're kind of in the ember stages of our country is because pulpits have gone cold?
Wow. That just hurts my spirit to hear you call it embers. Well, de Tocqueville, along with Montesquieu, were 2 of the people in which our founding fathers basically consulted when they created our Declaration of Independence and Constitution. And they were brilliant thinkers, and our country is an incredible experiment that's lasted because what we are God first in this country. God first, and we the people. We are the kings of our own environment. We're the kings of our own family environment. We are the kings of America. That's called We the People. And then underneath that is government. That is the proper order of the United States of America. And what we have is we're fighting against the principalities and powers, basically. So many countries in Europe have gone godless. Look what happened to Europe. All the churches have become mosques. In Portugal, which I just came back from, they actually banned the priests from the city square. They have to preach outside of the cities. They've turned the churches into museums or places where people can schedule a wedding, but they are no longer practicing inside the cities.
Yeah.
What is happening to us? And they live under a socialist society. They can only make a certain amount of money. They have to live a certain way. They can only drive certain cars, and their lifestyle is very small, and government is their God.
Gotcha.
And not in America.
Dran,
not in America.
Looking forward to seeing you this weekend. Real quickly, I want to give you the last 30 seconds. If folks want to get a hold of Salt and Light Council, read about it, support it, where would they go?
Yes, salt, and not pepper but salt, and A-N-D, light, not dark but light, council, COUNCIL.org, saltandlightcouncil.org. And we'd love to hear from any of your listeners. And if you're at the GOP, we hope to see you there. Come see us. Judeo-Christian Caucus will be on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. in the Terrace Room.
Dran, looking forward to seeing you, dear, and looking forward to doing my part.
You got it. Well, thank you, too. I appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Dran. All right. This is it for Politics in the Pulpit. Next week here in studio, we'll have gubernatorial candidate Leo Zaki joining us. Looking forward to seeing you next week. This is Pastor Cook saying thanks for listening in.